People say you get used to being laughed at, that after a while the sting dulls, the comments blend into background noise. Maybe that's true for some people, but not for me, not on that morning. It was the first week of senior year, and I walked into school wearing the same faded backpack I'd used since 9th grade. One strap was fraying, the zipper stuck sometimes, and the bottom was patched with fabric my guardian had sewn on by hand. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, the noise dipped. Then came the snickers. "Oh my God, look at her bag," someone whispered. A second voice laughed. "It's older than my little brother." And then Landon Pierce, the one who made cruelty look like accountability, leaned against his locker and smirked at me. "Cute backpack, Lila," he said loudly. "Did you borrow it from a time machine?" His friends cracked up. Phones lifted. Someone even pointed. I tightened my grip on the strap and kept walking, pretending their laughter didn't collect on my shoulders like stones. My cheeks burned, but I didn't look back. I just wanted to reach homeroom, sit in the back corner, and breathe. But Landon wasn't done. "Wait, check her shoes," he called. "Are those knockoffs? Girl, did you draw that logo yourself?" More laughter. Someone said, "She probably did." A few cameras flashed. I pushed open the classroom door and sank into my seat, staring out the window so no one would see the tears gathering. I wasn't ashamed of being poor, not really. I was ashamed that they didn't understand it. That they reduced everything I carried to a joke. Because what I carried wasn't poverty. It was the life someone built for me out of nothing. Someone who gave up everything to raise me. Most kids went home to parents who wore neat shoes, clean clothes, and worried about dinner reservations. I went home to someone who stitched my backpack every time it tore. Someone whose hands were rough and tired, but always gentle with me. They didn't know him. They didn't know what he sacrificed. They didn't know the truth of who shaped me into who I am. After class, I kept my head down and walked toward the cafeteria. I thought the day couldn't get worse. I was wrong. As I stepped inside, Landon held up his phone like a trophy. On the screen was a photo of my house, the peeling paint, the uneven porch, the rusted gate I always struggled to open. He grinned. "Guys, look, this is where Lila lives." The roar of laughter hit me like a punch. Not one or two voices, the whole table. My throat tightened. My hands trembled. They weren't just laughing at me. They were laughing at everything that kept me alive. Everything he worked for. Everything he gave. And they had no idea. They were laughing at the wrong person. I didn't stay in the cafeteria. I didn't even grab my lunch. I just turned around and walked out, my heartbeat thudding in my ears as the laughter chased me down the hallway. I kept my head low, kept my breaths short, kept my steps fast. If I looked at anyone, I knew I would break. By the time I reached the girls' bathroom, my hands were shaking. I locked myself in a stall and pressed my forehead against the cool metal door. Why did they have to take a picture? Why did they have to show everyone? Why did they think poverty was something a person chose? I hated that Landon's voice echoed in my head. I hated the humiliation burning in my chest. But what I hated most was the idea that anyone would laugh at the home someone poured their entire soul into to raise me. When I finally lifted my head, I caught my own reflection in the mirror outside the stall. Same old clothes, same worn shoes, same girl everyone thought they had figured out, but they didn't know anything. The bell rang and I forced myself to move. I spent the rest of the day doing what I always did, staying quiet, avoiding eye contact, pretending the comments didn't echo in every corner of my mind. By the last period, my chest felt tight. I just wanted to go home. Home. The word itself softened something inside me. When the final bell rang, I walked fast, out the main doors, past the parking lot where kids compared cars their parents bought them, and down the long road toward the edge of town. The sidewalk ended halfway, and the rest of the walk was all gravel crunching under my shoes. Every step felt like shedding something painful. When my house finally came into view, the knot in my chest loosened. Yes, it was small. Yes, the paint peeled. Yes, the roof sagged a little like it was always tired, but it was home. Home meant warmth. Home meant safety. Home meant him. I pushed the gate open. It screeched like always, and stepped onto the porch. The air smelt like cedar and old coffee, like it always did when he worked on something in the shed. Sure enough, I heard steady hammering from the backyard. I called softly, "I'm home." The hammering paused. A second later, the man who raised me stepped around the corner, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Hey, kiddo," he said, smiling the warm, lopsided smile that always made the world feel less cruel. "Rough day?" His voice alone nearly broke me. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. "Yeah," I whispered, "a little." He studied my face the way only he could, not like he was searching for flaws, but like he was searching for the wound underneath. He stepped closer and gently placed his calloused hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to talk about it yet. Just know you're home now." And I did know. This man, the one kids at school would call old, poor, uneducated, nobody. He was the reason I was still standing, the reason I had survived every storm, the reason I had a heart that still knew how to feel. He wasn't my father by blood, but he raised me with more love than most fathers ever give. And the world had no idea who he truly was. Not yet. He guided me inside with a gentle hand on my back, the same way he did when I was little and came home crying. The living room smelled faintly of cedar, cinnamon, and old books. Scents that always made me feel like the world couldn't touch me here. His tools lay scattered on the coffee table beside a half-empty mug, and his old rocking chair creaked softly as he sat down. "Sit, Lila," he said quietly. I sank into the couch, hugging a cushion. He watched me for a moment, reading me the way only he could, not judging, not questioning, just seeing. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, not yet." He nodded. "All right. I'm here either way." My chest tightened. He always did that, gave space without stepping away. I stared at my patched shoes again, the ones he'd fixed twice in the last month. Every stitch was a reminder that someone loved me enough to do the little things no one else noticed. "They made fun of the house again," I whispered. His expression tightened only slightly, but I noticed. He always tried to hide when something hurt him. "And your shoes?" he asked softly. I swallowed. Everything, actually. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he leaned back, rubbing his thumb along the arm of his chair. "People mock what they don't understand." "They took pictures," I added, voice barely audible. "Showed everyone." That, he didn't hide from. Pain flickered across his face, for me, not for himself. I felt my throat close. It just hurts. He stood and walked slowly to the kitchen. When he returned, he handed me a warm mug of tea and sat beside me. He didn't speak at first. He just placed his hand over mine, steady, grounding, safe. "Lila," he murmured, "I know what it feels like. Being judged for what you don't have." I blinked. "You do?" He hesitated, something he rarely did. "Yes, I know it very well." I waited for him to continue. Most people filled silence with rambling explanations. He filled silence with truth he never said. "Why?" I asked. He stared at the floor, thumb tapping the side of the mug. "Because people made assumptions about me before they knew anything. They thought they understood my worth from what I wore, where I lived, how I spoke." He paused. "They were wrong." I leaned closer. "What happened?" His jaw tightened for the briefest second. "Another time," he whispered. That was how he was, quiet, private, carrying a past he never shared. I'd always wondered about it, why he lived so simply. Why he took any job that came, why he never told me about his life before he found me. But his eyes softened again. "What matters is you don't let them define you. You're not lesser because you have less. You're more because you've learned to endure." My eyes stung. "You always say the right thing." "No," he said softly. "I just say what's true." He stood, started tidying the kitchen, humming under his breath. That hum always made the house feel fuller, warmer. And yet, There was something different today. A shadow in his expression. A heaviness in his shoulders. A secret he almost said, but didn't. I watched him for a long time, and a strange thought moved through me. Everyone at school laughed because they believed poverty defined me. But they didn't know him. They didn't know the sacrifices he made. They didn't know the history etched into his hands. And they had absolutely no idea who he really was. Not yet. After dinner, I sat on the porch steps with my knees pulled to my chest. The sky was fading into soft purple, and the first stars blinked through the clouds. It should have been calming, but my mind kept replaying the cafeteria. Landon holding up that picture of my crooked porch, everyone laughing like my life was a joke. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself. The screen door creaked open. He stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I moved over, and he lowered himself beside me, joints cracking the way they always did. He rested his elbows on his knees and looked out toward the yard. "Rough day?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah." He waited. He never demanded the story. He always let it come when I was ready. "They took pictures of the house," I finally whispered. "Showed everyone." He inhaled slowly, the kind of breath people take when they're holding something inside. "I'm sorry, kiddo," he said. "It's embarrassing." "For them," he said. I glanced at him. "How?" "Laughing at someone who's already doing their best." He shook his head. "That's weakness, not strength." The words hit deeper than he probably meant them to. "I just don't get why people care so much," I muttered. "Why it matters to them." "It doesn't matter," he said. "They just want to feel bigger." I rested my chin on my knees. "Did people make fun of you?" He paused, longer than usual. "Yes," he said softly. "When I was young, more than you'd think." "What did you do?" "Survived," he answered, "and learned not to measure myself through someone else's eyes." I studied him. His hands were resting on his thigh, rough, scarred, weathered. I'd seen them my whole life, but tonight they looked different. Old marks, faded cuts, something like healed burns. I reached out instinctively. "Does your hand hurt sometimes?" A flicker, quick, subtle, crossed his face. "Sometimes," he said, "old injuries." "Injuries from what?" He shifted, looking toward the street. "Another life." "What does that mean?" He didn't answer directly. I've lived long enough to know that not everything needs to be told at once. But something was there, something he was choosing not to open. "You never tell me anything about your past," I said softly. He gave a half smile. "Because the past isn't where I live anymore." "But it matters to me," I whispered. He stopped rocking. For a moment I thought he might finally explain. But instead, he stood and brushed the dust off his jeans. "I'll fix that porch light tomorrow," he said. "It's been flickering." "Wait," I called. "Before you go, can I ask one thing?" He turned. "Were you happy?" I asked. "Before you took me in?" He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen, tired, emotional, raw. "No," he said softly, "not really." He went inside before I could say anything else. The porch light flickered again, washing the yard in uneven glow. My chest tightened with a strange ache, not just from my day, but from the sudden understanding that the man who raised me carried more sorrow than I ever realized. Everyone laughed at me for being poor, but they had no idea who this man was, or what he survived, or what he sacrificed long before I ever came into his life. And I could feel it in my bones. His past wasn't just painful, it was important. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. No, not really. When I asked if he had been happy before he raised me, it wasn't just an answer. It was a confession, one that lingered in my chest long after the house went quiet. By morning, I felt heavy and unsteady. He was already at the kitchen table when I came out, sipping black coffee, steam curling around his weathered fingers. He looked tired, but he offered me his usual soft smile. "Morning, kiddo." "Morning." He watched me a little too carefully. "Rough night?" I shrugged. "You?" "Me?" He sipped his coffee. "I'm fine, just thinking." I knew that was his way of saying he wasn't fine, not entirely, but I didn't push. He always shared things in pieces, never all at once. As I grabbed my backpack and opened the door, he called after me. "Lila." I paused. "Don't let anybody make you feel small today," he said. "You're worth more than they'll ever understand." My throat tightened. "Okay." He smiled, soft, proud, worn at the edges. "That's my girl." I carried those words with me all the way to school. When I walked into the building, the hallways felt too bright, too loud. I could feel eyes on me, waiting for a reaction, waiting for weakness, waiting for another show. Halfway to class, Landon stepped into my path. His grin was already forming. "Hey, Lila," he said loudly. "Is your house still in one piece today, or did the wind knock it down?" A few kids snickered behind him. I adjusted my backpack strap and stared at him. "Move." "Ooh, look at her," Landon smirked. "Got some attitude now." He glanced at his friends, encouraging them to laugh. "Careful, that confidence might shake your house off its foundation." More laughter. Something in me snapped, but not in the way he expected. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just felt done. "You don't know anything about where I live," I said quietly. He shrugged. "I know it looks like a disaster." "You don't know who built it," I replied. He blinked, thrown off. "Who cares?" "You will," I said, stepping past him. His friends called after me, but the words didn't land. My guardian's voice echoed louder in my head. "You're worth more than they'll ever understand." For the first time all week, I believed him. When school ended, I didn't go straight home. I wasn't ready to face him with all the questions swirling in my mind. Instead, I walked to the old library downtown, the one where the lights buzzed and the floor creaked in comforting ways. The librarian, Mrs. Hart, smiled warmly. "Hello again, sweetheart." "Just here for some quiet," I said. I slid into a chair in the far back corner, the place where no one could see me unless they tried. I didn't pull out a book, I just let the silence fill the cracks inside me. That's when I heard them, two older women whispering near the history shelves. Their voices were low, but their words carried. "That man who lives with the Miller girl keeps to himself. He used to be someone important." I froze. "Someone important?" I leaned slightly closer, heart thudding. "Shame about what happened," one of them said. "People forget now, but I remember." My breath caught. "What happened?" the other whispered. They lowered their voices, too much. I couldn't hear the rest. Then they moved toward the front desk and disappeared. I sat there completely still, pulse roaring in my ears. Someone important, something happened. Something the town remembered, but never talked about. And suddenly the truth hit me hard. I didn't actually know who raised me. Not his real story, not his past. Not at all. I walked home from the library with questions buzzing in my head like angry bees. The air was cool, the kind that usually cleared my mind, but tonight it made everything sharper. Every footstep felt heavier, like each step brought me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. By the time I reached our crooked gate, the porch light was finally steady. He must have fixed it while I was gone. The house glowed warm and uneven, like it was smiling at me. He was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring out into the dark yard. As soon as he heard the gate creak, he looked up. "There you are," he said, relief softening his eyes. Was starting to worry. "Sorry," I murmured. "I needed some quiet." He nodded. "Library?" I stopped, surprised. "How did you know?" He smiled a little. "You always go there when your mind's too loud." I sat beside him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The crickets filled the silence. The porch boards groaned beneath our weight. Finally, I asked, "Why don't you ever talk about before? Before you found me?" He didn't move at first, not even a breath. Then he rubbed his palms together, a nervous habit I'd never noticed until now. "Some stories," he said finally, "are easier to live with when they stay quiet." I stared at him. "But they're still part of you." "Yes," he said softly, "and some parts I'd rather you never carry." His words stung in a way I didn't expect. Not because he was pushing me away, but because he was protecting me from something he believed was too heavy. "But it's part of who you are," I whispered. "Why hide it?" He looked up at the sky like he was searching for the right answer. "People look at me now and see a simple man, someone who works with his hands, keeps to himself, doesn't ask for much. I like it that way." "And before?" I pressed. A pause, a long one. Before he answered, I caught something in his expression, not anger, not fear, but sorrow. "Before," he said quietly, "I was someone I'm not proud of." My breath caught. What does that mean? He stood suddenly, brushing off his jeans. "It means mistakes were made, and I don't want them touching your life." "But they already are," I whispered. "Everyone laughs at me because they don't know who raised me. They assume you're no one, but something happened, didn't it?" He stared at me then, deeply, intensely, and for the first time I saw something terrifying in his eyes. Regret, real regret. "You shouldn't listen to whispers," he said gently. "But they're not just whispers," I insisted. "People in town know something. They remember something. Why don't you tell me?" Silence, heavy, unmoving. He finally let out a long, slow breath. "When you're older," he murmured, "when it won't hurt you the way it would now." I shook my head. It wouldn't hurt me. Not knowing hurts more. He stepped back, almost like my words pushed him. "Lila, please, let this rest." And then he walked inside, leaving me alone on the porch. My chest felt tight. Not because he refused, but because he was afraid. I'd never seen him afraid of anything. I looked at the porch lamp he had fixed. The steady glow lit the rough lines on the wood, the nails he had hammered in place, the floorboards he had replaced by hand. Everything he built hid something. Every silence whispered of a past he refused to bring into the light. And I realized something chilling. Whatever happened to him, whatever he used to be, it was big enough that he'd rather let the whole town laugh at me than let me know the truth. The next morning, something felt wrong before I even reached school. The air was heavy, like the day was holding its breath. I walked slowly, thinking about his words from the night before. Before, I was someone I'm not proud of. It stayed with me like a bruise. When I entered the hallway, people didn't laugh the way they usually did. Instead, they stared, quick glances, then sudden silence. My stomach tightened as I walked to my locker. That's when I saw it. Someone had taped a blown-up photo of my house right on the door of my locker. The peeling paint, the crooked porch, the rusted gate, everything on full display. Across the bottom, someone had written in red marker, "Home of the Year." The laughter wasn't loud this time, but I felt it buzzing behind me like a swarm. My hands shook as I tore the paper down and stuffed it into my backpack. Behind me, Landon's voice came too easily. "Relax, Lila, it's just a joke." I turned. "A joke?" "Come on," he said. "If your house didn't look like a disaster, no one would care." My voice came out low. "Leave me alone." "Make me," he taunted. Before I could reply, a teacher stepped forward. "Enough, both of you, office, now." My stomach dropped. Landon rolled his eyes like it was nothing. I followed quietly, feeling like I was walking through fog. Inside the principal's office, Ms. Rowan stared at us with steel in her expression. "Landon," she snapped, "do you understand how serious this is? Posting pictures of someone's home, publicly humiliating another student." "It was a joke," he muttered. "Harassment," she corrected. Then she turned to me and her voice softened. "Lila, are you okay?" I nodded even though my throat ached. Just embarrassed. You shouldn't be, she said firmly. There is no shame in where you come from. Landon scoffed. Oh, please. One more word, Ms. Rowan warned, and it's suspension. He shut up. She assigned him a week of detention. He looked ready to explode, but for once, he kept quiet. When we were dismissed, I walked out quickly. I just wanted air, space, something that didn't hurt. But as soon as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stay in your place. Poor kids don't belong here. My breath caught. Another text. Stop acting like you matter. I stopped walking. The words hit harder than the laughter, harder than the picture, harder than anything Landon said. I deleted the messages, but they stayed lodged in my chest. I walked home fast, almost running. When I reached the house, he was outside repairing the fence. He looked up immediately when he saw my face. Lila, he said, voice tense. What happened? I didn't answer. I just walked straight to him, arms wrapping around his waist, hiding my face in his shirt. He held me instantly, arms strong and steady, like he'd been waiting for me to break so he could keep the pieces together. When I finally stepped back, he studied me with quiet worry. There's something you're not saying, he murmured. I swallowed hard. There's something you're not saying either. His expression shifted, pain, fear, regret, and I realized something. His past wasn't behind him anymore. It was starting to reach for me. That evening, the house felt too small for the storm inside me. I kept replaying the texts, the picture taped to my locker, the way Landon smirked like he owned the world. But beneath all of that, something deeper gnawed at me. Who was the man who raised me, and what was he so afraid to tell me? I sat on the couch, trying to calm my breathing. He was at the kitchen sink washing dishes, humming softly like nothing was wrong, but I could see it, that stiffness in his shoulders, the slow way he dried each cup as if his mind was far away. Finally, he turned off the tap and walked into the living room. Want to tell me what happened today? He asked gently. No, I said, then softer. Not yet. He sat across from me, leaning forward. Then tell me what you need. I swallowed. Answers. His brows drew together. About what? About you. Silence, not a cold one, just heavy, reluctant, almost trembling. He exhaled slowly. Lila, you can trust me, I whispered. I do, he said instantly. More than anyone. Then why do you hide everything about who you were? He didn't look away this time. Instead, he sat back, rubbing his palms together, the nervous habit that only appeared when something truly rattled him. Because who I was, he said quietly, isn't someone I'm proud of. I felt my heart thud. Did you hurt someone? No, he said immediately. But I hurt myself. I let life break me in ways I shouldn't have. He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the darkness like it held old ghosts only he could see. I was stupid, he murmured, young, angry. I made choices that cost me things I could never get back. Like what? I asked. He took a long breath. Everything. The word felt like a blow. Before I could ask more, someone knocked on the door, 3 sharp knocks that made both of us jump. He stiffened instantly, shoulders rising, posture changing in a way I'd never seen. Stay here, he said. I watched him open the door, only a crack. Outside stood a tall man in a gray jacket, holding a stack of papers. Evening, the man said. Are you Mr. Sawyer? Sawyer, not Miller, not the name he'd given me. He hesitated. Depends who's asking. I'm looking for Samuel Sawyer, the man said, flipping through his papers. We need to confirm an address. My heart stopped. Samuel, that wasn't his name. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him, but the windows were old. I could hear everything. Why are you looking for me? He asked quietly. We're following up on a 20-year-old case, the man said. Something reopened. Something
involving you.
My blood went cold. The man continued.
We just need your cooperation.
He didn't answer for a long moment. Finally, he whispered.
I told you people, I left that life behind. We know, the man said. But someone came forward, someone who remembers.
I covered my mouth with my hand to stop a gasp. After a tense moment, the man gave him a card.
Call the number, sooner rather than later.
Footsteps faded. The car engine started. The street went quiet. He stayed outside a long time, standing completely still, staring at the card in his hand like it was a ghost risen from the ground. When he finally came in, his face was pale, like something in him had cracked open.
Who was that?
I whispered. He swallowed hard.
Someone who used to know me.
But your name, Samuel? And what case? What are they talking about? He sat on the couch slowly, hands trembling just enough for me to notice.
Lila,
he said quietly, voice shaking at the edges.
There's something you need to know about who I used to be.
I felt my breath stop. This was it. The truth behind the silence, the past he spent my whole life running from, the reason people whispered in town, and it was about to change everything. He didn't speak at first. He just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor as if the truth were written in the wood grain. His breathing was uneven, his hands clasped too tightly together, the posture of someone bracing for a blow. I sat across from him, heart pounding. Please, I whispered. Tell me. He nodded once, but it took him another long moment before words finally came.
My name,
he said slowly,
is Samuel Sawyer.
I froze. But you told the school your name was Miller, I said.
I know,
he replied, voice low.
I changed it when I took you in. I didn't want anyone connecting you to who I used to be.
My throat tightened. Why would anyone care what your name was?
Because,
he whispered.
My old name carried trouble. The kind of trouble that ruins people just by being near them.
He leaned back, pressing a hand to his forehead.
20 years ago, I lived a very different life. Bigger city, bigger consequences. I was young, reckless, angry at the world.
I inched closer. What did you do? His eyes glistened in a way I'd never seen.
Everything I shouldn't have.
I waited, breath held.
I wasn't a criminal, he said. Not in the way you're thinking. I didn't steal or hurt people, but I surrounded myself with men who did.
He swallowed.
And I looked the other way, again and again.
He stared out the window, voice barely above a whisper.
That neglect cost someone their life.
A chill crawled up my spine. Whose? I asked, barely breathing.
A friend, he said, closing his eyes. A good man. A man who trusted me to keep him safe. I didn't, and he died because I didn't speak when I should have.
I covered my mouth. He wasn't telling me everything, not yet, but the pain in his voice was real.
I testified afterward, he said quietly. Told the truth about the men involved. Saved some people, helped put others away. But it didn't matter. The damage was done, and I couldn't live with being Samuel Sawyer anymore.
His voice cracked.
So I left, built a new life far away, a quiet one, a small one where I could try to be a better man than I was.
My chest ached for him.
That's where I found you, he added softly, or where you found me.
Tears stung my eyes. You raised me. You saved me. He shook his head.
No, sweetheart. Saving you saved me. He looked at me then, really looked, eyes full of fear. But now someone from that life is stirring things again, and I don't want you anywhere near it. I wiped my cheeks. I'm not afraid of your past. You should be, he said quietly. Someone out there hasn't forgiven me. Someone might come looking. His words hit me like a blow, not because he had a past, but because he had carried it alone for so long. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because your life is hard enough, he said. You're already judged for not having money. I couldn't let them judge you for my sins, too. My chest squeezed painfully. So what happens now? He shook his head slowly. I don't know, but whatever comes, I'll face it. I won't run again. Not alone, I said firmly. He blinked, startled. Lila. I'm not leaving you, I said. You raised me. You gave me a home when you had nothing. I don't care what you did before. I care who you are now. Something inside him shattered, in the best way. His shoulders shook. He pressed a hand to his mouth. Lila, he whispered. I don't deserve you. You deserve the truth being seen, I said. All of it. He took a shaky breath and nodded, but behind that nod was fear he couldn't hide, because now that the truth had surfaced, his past wasn't done with him, and it was coming closer.
For the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the image of him sitting there. Samuel Sawyer, a name he had buried so deeply it felt like a stranger's. I kept repeating it in my mind, trying to match it with the man who cooked me breakfast, fixed my shoes, and tucked blankets around me when I fell asleep on the couch. I couldn't reconcile the two, not yet. By morning, the fear in his eyes haunted me more than the story itself. He tried to act normal, made coffee, fried eggs, hummed under his breath, but something was different. He kept glancing at the window, the door, his phone. His shoulders were tense, like he expected someone to knock again. Did you sleep? He asked. Not really. Me neither, he admitted. I sat at the table across from him. The sunlight hit the scars on his knuckles, and I found myself seeing every line differently now, like each one was a piece of a story he had tried so hard to protect me from. Is someone going to hurt you? I asked quietly. His jaw tightened. No. Are they going to hurt us? He hesitated, and that was enough of an answer. Before I could press further, there was a sound outside, the crunch of gravel. We both froze. He stood instantly, chair scraping the floor, and moved toward the window, but it was just the mail truck. He exhaled shakily and sat back down. Samuel, I whispered, the name strange on my tongue. He flinched, not in anger, but in pain. Please, he murmured, just call me what you always have. I nodded immediately. Okay. He looked relieved. That one small mercy mattered to him more than I expected. At school, nothing felt normal. People stared quietly, whispering to each other behind lockers, their eyes sliding away whenever I looked up. It wasn't the mocking kind of attention anymore, it was something else. Curiosity, suspicion, fear. Something had changed. The text messages hadn't spread, but someone must have heard about the office incident. Or maybe Landon had told a different version of the story, one where he was the victim and I was dramatic. But I didn't care about them today. I cared about the man waiting at home with a past heavy enough to crack him. During lunch, I stepped outside to get air. The courtyard was empty except for one person, Mrs. Hart from the library. She must have been delivering something to the office because she walked right toward me with a cautious smile. Lila, dear, she said, can I talk to you for a moment? My stomach tightened. Sure. She looked around to make sure no one was listening. I didn't want to upset you yesterday, she said softly, but I want you to know something. My pulse picked up. About him? She nodded. About Samuel. Hearing his real name from someone else sent a shiver down my spine. People judge without knowing, she said. They remember the headlines, not the truth. But I knew your guardian when he first came to town. I blinked. You did? She nodded. He was broken, completely shattered. But he was trying to rebuild himself. I've never seen a man work harder at starting over. Her voice softened even more. And when he found you? Or rather, when you found him? It changed him. He became human again. My eyes stung. He didn't tell me everything. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. He's afraid the truth will make you see him the way the world once did. How did the world see him? I whispered. Mrs. Hart hesitated, choosing her words carefully. They saw a man who made a terrible mistake, but they didn't see the man who spent 20 years trying to make it right. A tear rolled down my cheek. She gave my shoulder a final squeeze. Whatever you do, don't let the rumors define him. I nodded, unable to speak. As she walked away, a cold realization settled in my chest. There were stories about him, old ones, painful ones, stories that were starting to surface again. And I wasn't sure we were ready. I walked home with Mrs. Hart's words echoing in my head. They remember the headlines, not the truth. He spent 20 years trying to make it right. By the time I reached our gate, my chest felt tight. He was on the porch, sitting in the same spot where he'd waited for me since I was little. But tonight, he looked older, like the past had finally caught him. He stood when he saw me. Everything okay? No, I said honestly. He nodded, as if he expected that. Inside, the house felt quieter than usual. I dropped my backpack and sat at the table. He sat across from me, rubbing his thumb over his knuckles, scarred, tired, familiar. Someone recognized you, I said quietly. He closed his eyes. I know. Mrs. Hart told me people only remember the headlines. What headlines? A long silence stretched between us. Finally, he spoke. There was an accident, he said. A fire. My breath hitched. A fire? He nodded. A warehouse burned. 3 men died. I didn't set it, but I should have stopped it. I knew the men involved. I knew they were planning something stupid, and I stayed quiet. His voice was rough, scraped by regret. When the fire started, I tried to go in, he continued. I pulled one man out. I couldn't reach the others. And the world decided I was guilty for not stopping it in the first place. My heart pounded. Is that why you testified? Yes, he said. I told the truth. The men responsible went to prison. But the town I lived in? They needed someone to blame, and they chose me. He leaned back, eyes distant. I left everything, changed my name, started over in a place where no one knew what I failed to do. I swallowed hard. And then you took me in. He looked at me, really looked. You were 5, alone, scared. I saw myself in you, someone the world had given up on. I blinked back tears. You saved me. He shook his head. No, you gave me a reason to be better. A tear slipped down my cheek. I whispered, Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because, he said softly, you already carry enough. I didn't want this story added to your shoulders. My voice cracked. But it's part of who you are, and I should have known. He reached across the table and took my hand. What matters is who we've become, not what broke us. I squeezed his hand tightly, but before either of us could say more, headlights swept across the front window. A car pulled up to the house slowly, deliberately. He stood instantly, tension gripping every muscle. Through the window, a figure stepped out. Not the man from before, someone younger, someone angry. My heart raced. Stay inside, he said. No, I whispered. Not this time. He hesitated, but didn't argue. A sharp knock hit the door. He opened it only a crack. The stranger glared. Samuel Sawyer? His shoulders tensed. Who's asking? You don't know me, the man said, voice shaking with rage. But my father died in that fire. My stomach dropped. And you, the man said, are the reason his case is open again. The porch light flickered. Everything suddenly felt very, very fragile. The man on our porch looked like he hadn't slept in days. His jaw was tight, his eyes rimmed red, fists clenched at his sides. But beneath the anger, I saw something else. Grief. Old grief. The kind that never heals right. Samuel stood in the doorway, blocking me with one arm. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know who you are. The man's voice cracked. Then you know why I'm here. Yes, Samuel answered. And you deserve answers. No, the man snapped. I deserve justice. His eyes flicked past Samuel and landed on me. Is that your daughter? Samuel stiffened. She has nothing to do with this. The man scoffed. Neither did my dad. But he still died because you didn't open your mouth soon enough. Samuel swallowed. I can't change the past, but I tried to make it right. Tried? The man's voice shook. You testified after the fire, after everything was destroyed, after he was gone. You waited too long. Samuel didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just lowered his eyes and said, I know. The silence that followed felt like a crack spreading across the night. Why are you here? Samuel finally asked. The man took out a folded paper and shoved it toward him. Because the case reopened. New evidence surfaced. People are talking. And your name came up again. Samuel's hand trembled as he took the paper. I see. You should, the man said. Because if this goes public, he pointed at me, will hear everything. I stepped forward despite Samuel's warning hand. I already know, I said. I know what happened. I know he made mistakes, but he isn't the monster you think he is. The man stared at me, stunned by my tone. Your father died, I whispered. And you're hurting. I'm so sorry. But he didn't kill him. The man's jaw tightened. He didn't save him either. Samuel's voice broke. I tried. God, I tried. The man cut him off. Trying isn't enough. Samuel flinched. I felt my heart twist. The man turned to leave but stopped on the second step. He'll have to talk to the investigators again. They're coming to town. When? Samuel asked. Soon. Then he looked at me and his expression softened just a little. I don't hate you, he said, but you deserve to know the kind of man who raised you. I stepped forward. I do know. His breath caught just for a second. Then he walked away into the dark. When the car finally disappeared, Samuel closed the door slowly. He leaned against it like the weight of 20 years had suddenly landed on his back. You should go lie down, I said softly. No, he whispered. I have to tell you the rest. He sank into the couch, shoulders slumped, hands trembling. I sat beside him, waiting, not with fear but with a strange calm. Because whatever came next, I needed to hear it. He rubbed his face. The man who died, he wasn't just a friend. I held my breath. He was my brother. My heart stopped. Samuel's voice broke. He trusted me to stop those men. And I stayed quiet. I convinced myself they were just threatening. I didn't think they would actually set the fire. Tears blurred my vision. I killed him by not speaking, he whispered. And I've lived every day trying to make up for it. I reached for his hand, scarred, shaking, tired. You saved me, I whispered. You saved so many people since then. You're not the man you used to be. He shook his head. But the past is coming back. Then we face it, I said firmly, together. He looked at me with disbelief and something like hope. For the first time, I felt his fear shift. Not vanish, but lighten. Because he wasn't alone anymore. For a long time, neither of us moved. Samuel sat hunched over, hands clasped tightly, eyes distant and full of old pain. I sat beside him, trying to steady my breathing. The truth felt heavy, but not the kind that crushed, the kind that finally explained everything. He finally spoke. "I didn't just lose my brother," he said quietly. "I lost myself. After the fire, I couldn't look in a mirror without seeing the man who failed him." I swallowed. "You didn't set the fire." "But I didn't stop it," he whispered. "I knew the men involved. I knew they were dangerous. I thought staying silent meant staying safe. I was wrong." His voice cracked. "I should have warned him. I should have done something." I touched his arm gently. "You've spent 20 years trying to make it right." He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw the guilt he had carried alone. "I didn't think I deserved a second chance," he murmured. "Then, I found you." "You didn't find me," I said. "You saved me." His eyes softened. "You gave me a reason to live again." Before I could speak, someone knocked on the door, a softer, hesitant knock this time. Samuel tensed but stood anyway. When he opened it, a woman stepped into the porch light, gray jacket, clipboard in hand, official but not threatening. "Mr. Sawyer?" she asked gently. He sighed. "Yes." "I'm with the state investigator's office. I'm here to ask a few questions." Samuel nodded, resigned. I expected this. She glanced past him and saw me. "Should she be here?" "Yes," Samuel said firmly. "She stays." We all sat at the small kitchen table. She opened her notebook. "Samuel, new evidence suggests the fire was not started by the men you testified against. There was a fourth person present that night, someone who escaped." Samuel stiffened. "Who?" "We're not sure yet," she said, "but someone has come forward claiming you were blamed too quickly. They said you tried to go back inside." He blinked, stunned. "Someone said that?" "Yes, they said you pulled 2 people out before the roof collapsed." My breath caught. "You saved 2?" Samuel's jaw trembled. "I never told anyone." She nodded. "There's more. The man who confronted you last night, he's involved, but not in the way you think. He believed you'd abandoned your brother, but he didn't know the full story." Samuel lowered his head. "He has a right to be angry." "Angry at the truth?" she asked gently, "or at the story he thought was truth?" Samuel looked shattered. She closed her notebook and stood. "We're reopening the case to clear your name, officially." For a moment the room went silent, then Samuel whispered, "Why now?" "Because someone finally spoke up," she said, "someone who has carried guilt of their own." After she left, Samuel sank into his chair, covering his face with both hands. Not in shame, in relief so sharp it looked painful. "Lila," he choked out, "I thought I'd have to run again." "You won't," I said, wrapping my arms around him. "Not this time." He held on to me like he was afraid I'd disappear, and for the first time I felt something shift inside him. The weight he carried was finally beginning to lift. The next morning felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just different, like the world was pausing before it changed. Samuel was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with untouched coffee, staring at nothing. "You okay?" I asked softly. He exhaled slowly. "I don't know." I sat across from him. "They're reopening the case, to clear you." "That doesn't erase what happened," he said. "It doesn't bring my brother back." "No," I whispered. "But it means you're not the monster people made you out to be." A flicker of pain crossed his eyes. "I never cared what strangers thought. I cared what you would think." My heart broke a little. "I would never turn away from you." He nodded, but uncertainty lingered in his expression, like he didn't quite believe he deserved forgiveness. At school, the atmosphere had shifted again. People didn't laugh, they didn't whisper, they just watched me, as if waiting to see how broken I was. I kept walking. Halfway down the hall, someone stepped up beside me. It wasn't Landon, it wasn't a teacher. It was the boy from the porch, the son of the man who died in the fire. I froze. He spoke quietly. "I shouldn't have come to your house like that." My breath caught. "Why are you here?" He ran a hand through his hair, eyes softer than before. "Because the investigators talked to me last night. I didn't know everything. I thought your guardian. I thought he caused the fire." "You thought wrong," I said. "I know." He swallowed. "And I'm sorry.
I let anger blind me.
You scared him, I whispered. He nodded.
I know that too.
He hesitated, then added.
My father, he was a good man. Your guardian tried to pull him out. They told me that. And now I don't know what to do with how long I hated someone who didn't deserve it.
I didn't say anything. He didn't expect me to. He stepped back.
I just wanted you to know. The truth changed things for me. Maybe it will for the town too.
When he walked away, I felt something loosen inside my chest, a knot that had been growing since this all began. The truth was starting to unfold. When I got home, Samuel was on the porch again, staring at the woods behind our house. He looked up when I approached. Someone came to see me today, I said. His shoulders tensed.
Who?
The man's son. He apologized. Samuel went still.
What?
He knows what really happened, and he doesn't hate you anymore. Samuel pressed a hand to his mouth, overwhelmed.
I never wanted him to suffer because of me.
You didn't cause his suffering, I said gently. You were suffering too. He sat down heavily, burying his face in his hands.
I've lived so long thinking everyone saw me as the reason my brother died.
I sat beside him. Do you want to know how I see you? He didn't look up.
How?
As the man who gave up everything to raise me with love. That's who you are. He finally turned toward me, tears in his eyes. He looked younger in that moment, like someone finally freed from a sentence he never deserved.
I never expected to hear those words,
he whispered. You earned them. He took my hand, holding it like it was the only thing keeping him steady.
What happens now?
He asked quietly. We wait, I said, for the truth to finish its job. He nodded slowly, and for the first time, I saw something in him I hadn't seen in years. Hope. The investigators returned 3 days later. Their car rolled up the driveway slowly, the same way someone approaches a wounded animal. Carefully, respectfully. Samuel stood beside me on the porch, hands steady but jaw tight. I could feel the tremor in him even if he didn't show it. 2 officials stepped out. The woman from before gave him a reassuring nod. Mr. Sawyer, she said, we have an update. He swallowed.
Good or bad?
Good, she answered. Very good. They sat with us at the porch table, papers in hand. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The 4th man who was at the warehouse that night has confessed. She explained. He said he lit the fire. He admitted he threatened you, your brother, and the other workers. He admitted you tried to stop him and that you went back inside to save them. Samuel's breath hitched.
He confessed?
The investigator nodded. You saved 2 men that night, and you nearly died trying to save your brother. Samuel closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down.
For 20 years,
he whispered.
I thought everyone believed the worst of me.
They did, the other investigator said gently. But they were wrong. The truth is finally documented. You're officially cleared. Those words hung in the air, warm and heavy, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Cleared. After 20 years of guilt, 20 years of hiding, 20 years of believing he wasn't worth forgiveness. He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. I wrapped my arm around him as he leaned into me, trembling with relief. The woman placed a small folder on the table. This contains your cleared record, statements from survivors, and formal apologies from the state. He didn't take it at first. He just stared. Then quietly he whispered,
Thank you.
The investigators left us in the fading afternoon light, and the porch felt brighter than it ever had. That evening, we walked into town together. Usually people look past us, or worse, down at us. But today, something was different. Eyes softened as we passed. Voices whispered without malice. Even the people who once mocked us stood still, unsure, almost humbled. Outside the grocery store, the son of the man who had confronted us approached again. This time, no anger, just sincerity.
They told me,
he said to Samuel.
I'm sorry I blamed you.
Samuel nodded, unable to speak.
You were a hero,
The man added.
and I never knew.
Samuel's eyes glistened, but he managed a soft, broken smile.
Thank you.
When he walked away, Samuel let out a long breath, one that sounded like it had been trapped in him for decades. On the walk home, he stopped suddenly.
Lila,
He said, voice thick.
thank you for standing by me.
I squeezed his hand. You're my family, always. He looked down at me with a gentleness that made my chest ache.
I spent so long thinking my life ended the night of the fire, but you gave me a second one.
I smiled. And now you get to live it without fear. We reached our crooked gate, our leaning porch, our little house, the one everyone laughed at. But tonight, it didn't feel small. It felt like a victory. He stood in front of the door for a moment, staring at the warm glow inside.
They mocked you for being poor,
He murmured.
but they had no idea the truth.
What truth? I asked softly.
That the girl they laughed at
He said, placing a hand on my shoulder.
was raised by a man who finally found his courage because of her.
My throat tightened, eyes burning. And the man who thought he was broken, I whispered, was never broken at all. He smiled, a real, full smile, one I hadn't seen in years. We walked inside together, the past behind us, the truth in the open, and a future finally ours.